The phone call that killed the man I used to be lasted exactly 82 seconds. I know, because I watched the timer on my screen as my former mentor, a man who'd once called me his protégé, systematically dismantled my life. "You're a liability, Mark," he said, his voice flat, devoid of the warmth I once knew. "You didn't just report a health code violation. You manufactured hysteria. Black mold and rat droppings are one thing, claiming they were moving with unnatural intent, that the nests were built around that creepy little wooden doll we found in the wall. You've made the whole industry look like a bunch of lunatics." He told me I was blacklisted. Every major pest control company in the state had my file. The word was out. Mark is unstable. A pariah. The phone clicked, and I was left standing in my sterile, empty apartment, the silence roaring in my ears. The betrayal didn't just sting. It cauterized something inside me. It left a scar in the shape of that doll's grinning, wooden face. That's how my exile began. At first it was just desperation. I started digging, not for work, but for answers. I went back to that restaurant late at night and found the doll gone. But the stain of it remained. A cold spot on the floorboards. A faint, sickly sweet smell like rotting candy. The new exterminator they hired told the owners it was just a plumbing leak. But I knew. I knew the rats would be back. Only this time they wouldn't just be rats. My family saw my obsession as a psychotic break. The doll hunter, my brother David, would sneer at family dinners I could no longer afford to miss. "Still chasing spooky toys, Mark?" My mother would just look at me with this unbearable pity, pushing pamphlets for therapists into my hands. "It's not healthy, honey," she'd whisper. "You're scaring us." They didn't see the research, the late night spent cross-referencing folklore with modern infestation reports. They didn't see the patterns. A spike in rodent plagues in a neighborhood, always preceded by a family finding an old-fashioned toy in their attic. A rash of insect-borne illness after an antique marionette was gifted. These weren't just haunted objects. They were nests, focal points. They were effigies that didn't just attract pests, they bred them. Cursed vermin, born from splintered wood and stitched fabric, carrying a contagion that didn't just sicken the body, but warped the mind, twisted reality itself. I became a specialist in a field that didn't exist. Cursed artifact pest control. I found my clients in desperate whispers on niche internet forums. People who had been dismissed by everyone else, just like me. My first real case was a porcelain doll in a little girl's bedroom. The family called me about a bedbug problem no exterminator could fix. But these weren't bedbugs. They were tiny, chittering things made of dried silk and human hair, with mismatched button eyes that mirrored the doll's. They didn't just bite. They whispered. They crawled into your ears while you slept and planted nightmares. I learned how to fight them. It wasn't about poison. It was about severance. You had to break the artifact's hold on the physical world. I used cold iron filings, salt lines infused with ash, and a custom-built UV frequency emitter that disrupted the specific resonant energy these things put out. I nearly lost my mind in that little girl's room. The doll screamed when I finally contained it in a lead-lined box, not with a voice, but with a wave of pure, agonizing grief that brought me to my knees. But I did it. The whispers stopped. The chittering things crumbled into dust. I got a reputation, a dark one. I was the guy you called when you were out of options. I was the whisper in the dark that other whispers feared. I wasn't a disgrace anymore. I was a necessity. The call from my sister, Sarah, came after 3 years of near total silence. Her voice was frayed, thin with sleeplessness. "Mark, you have to come home, please." "What is it, Sarah?" I asked, my own voice now a low, calm monotone, the voice of a man who'd seen things chew holes in the fabric of reality. It's the house. The family home. There's something wrong. Pests. We've had 3 companies out. They can't find a source. But the scratching? Mark. It's in the walls. And the smells. And David's little girl. She's having nightmares. She says the whispers are telling her bad things. I didn't say I told you so. There was no triumph in it. Only a cold, heavy certainty. I packed my kit, the iron filings, the salt, the emitter, the lead-lined containment units. I drove the 5 hours back to the house I grew up in, the place where my obsession was born and mocked in equal measure. They were all waiting for me in the living room. My mother, her face etched with fear. My brother David, his usual arrogance replaced by a desperate, hollowed-out look. His wife was clutching their daughter, who stared at nothing with wide, terrified eyes. They looked at me, at my strange, heavy cases, and for the first time, there was no ridicule, only raw, naked fear. "Show me," I said. The source wasn't hard to find. I felt it the moment I stepped inside, a low hum of malevolence that vibrated in my teeth. It was coming from the mantelpiece, from a small, antique music box Grandma had cherished. A beautifully carved wooden ballerina, frozen mid-pirouette. "It's been acting up," my mother whispered, "playing on its own at night. A distorted tune." As I approached, the air grew thick and cloying, like old perfume and decay. I could hear it now, the scratching. It wasn't rats. It was the sound of 1,000 tiny wooden splinters dragging themselves through the wall plaster. I unlatched my main case. "What are you doing?" David asked, his voice trembling. I didn't answer. I pulled on my thick leather gloves and took out a small thermal sensor. The ballerina was radiating a deep, unnatural cold. "This is the nest," I said, my voice echoing in the tense silence. "Everything you're hearing, smelling, it's coming from her." And then, as if on cue, the ballerina's head slowly turned. Its painted-on smile seemed to widen. From the shadows beneath the sofa, a creature skittered out. It was a rat, but made of warped, dark wood, its joints clicking audibly. It had no eyes, only knots in the grain. Then another came, and another. They weren't scurrying, they were marching. My sister screamed. David swore, grabbing a fire poker. "Don't," I commanded, my voice sharp as broken glass. "You'll just agitate them." I turned on the emitter. A low, pulsing thrum filled the room, and the wooden rats froze, twitching. But the worst was yet to come. A whisper slithered from the walls, coiling around us. It was David's voice, but twisted with scorn. "Still chasing spooky toys, Mark?" Then my mother's. "It's not healthy, honey. You're scaring us." My family froze, their faces masks of pure hearer. They were hearing their own disbelief, their own mockery. Weaponized and turned back on them by the thing they'd let fester in their home. They finally saw it. Not just the pests, but the source of the horror. They saw the truth I'd been living, the reality they had called a delusion. I ignored the whispers. I'd heard far worse. I worked methodically, laying a circle of iron-laced salt around the mantelpiece. The wooden vermin began to crack and splinter, falling apart as they tried to cross the line. Finally, I reached out and took the music box. The moment my gloved fingers touched it, a silent shriek of psychic agony flooded the room. My family recoiled, clutching their heads. I just stood there, enduring it. It was a familiar pain. I placed the box into the lead-lined container and sealed the latches. The scratching stopped. The whispers died. The oppressive cold vanished. The silence that fell was absolute, profound, and more terrifying than any noise had been. They couldn't look at me, not directly. They just stared at the sealed, humming case on the floor, at the faint scorch mark the salt line had left on the hardwood. They had seen what I see every day. They had heard their own judgment echoed back from the abyss. I packed up my kit. No one spoke. As I stood at the door, my mother finally found her voice, a choked, broken whisper. "Mark, I'm so sorry." I looked at her, at all of them, huddled together in their now quiet living room. I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel vindicated. I just felt a great